What is the relation between faith and education? And today I would like to highlight three of the most important aspects of this relationship. First, how faith establishes the focus. And I'm speaking here always of educational institutions. Second, how faith directs the teacher. And third, how faith opens the heart. Now, before I go into detail into each of these 3 points, let me first explain where I am coming from saying this. I am not an academic expert on pedagogy or theology, having neither a degree in the one nor in the other. In fact, I'm a poor lawyer and a legal philosopher by training. Yet in life, I have had the great privilege to receive so much in faith and education through my family, my parish, my schooling, and the educational institutions I helped build up and lead during the past 30 years. In fact, there is no pedagogical degree that could have given me what I received during these decades, being devoted to my own education, to the education of my children, and to the education of those attending the institutions I have been leading and building. Education, in short, is my life vocation. So I come to the first of those 3 points, how faith establishes the focus. I would like to start with a personal anecdote. In 2012, 11 years ago, our oldest of now 5 children was 10 years old, and my wife and I were pondering the question where to send him to secondary school, to gymnasium. We had visited all public and private schools in our area, also those calling themselves Catholic or evangelical. But we could not find any of them to be in accordance with the high standards of faith and education we were looking for as parents. You see, for my wife and I, there is nothing more important in our parental duties than protecting and nourishing and preparing for life the souls of our children. When we die and stand before God, that is what He will ask us. What did you do to guard the souls of the little ones I entrusted to your care? No career, no fame, no money is as important as that single responsibility we have as parents and educators. The souls of the little ones that are entrusted to us. And when I speak about little ones, I use all of us, because in the eyes of God, we are all His little ones. So we had to discern as parents whether to move countries to find schools for us, or to do homeschooling, which is very hard in most European countries, or to found a school ourselves. And the last we did in 2013, now 10 years ago. We did so because we primarily wanted a school for our children where the focus was right. Thus, where a Christian faith that is not watered down or secularized was the guiding principle. When founding the Gymnasium Schola Thomas Morus, the following words spoken in 2008 by Pope Benedict XVI during a meeting he had with educators in Washington, D.C., were our main inspiration and remain so until today. He says, "First and foremost, every Catholic educational institution is a place to encounter the living God who in Jesus Christ reveals his transforming love and truth." Let me quote that to you again. First and foremost, every Catholic, and we can say every Christian, educational institution is a place to encounter the living God who in Jesus Christ reveals his transforming love and truth. Two words stick out here: encounter and revelation. What faith, a living faith, not an academically dry faith, what a living faith does to education is that it allows the encounter with Jesus Christ, and it facilitates the revelation of the Creator God's love and truth in daily life. Thus, the student is immersed in an environment where he or she is helped to see the reality of the created order. And that in modern times is so important. The reality of the created order, not our opinions about it, not our feelings about it, the reality of the created order. And we do that through the personal relationship he or she is allowed to daily build up with God. The God became man who is the author of creation. Not human beings are the author of creation. We might be called at times co-authors. Thus, the focus that faith provides in education is on what it means to be human. Let me repeat that we understand that. The focus that faith provides in education is on what it means to be human. The integral development of the whole human person, body, mind, and soul. This is the focus. Not skill sets, competencies, or standardized scores and curricula. No, as St. Thomas More said it so well, education is to lay bare what lies hidden as a seed. Education is to lay bare what lies hidden as a seed. I come to the second point. How faith directs the teacher. When, as we just described, faith directs the focus of an educational endeavor to focus on the growth in wisdom and character of the individual student in his or her unique calling in life, then the teacher, professor, instructor, or coach will also automatically be directed away from what I would like to call the dehumanizing bureaucratic standards or ideologies, and instead ask the question, how can I, as an educator, help this person in becoming who he or she is? The seed of being has to grow in every human being in order that they take their place of vocation in the world, their God-given calling. Yet, in order for the teacher, the educator, to even be able to fulfill this essential role, The teacher first needs to have an inner life, a life rooted in prayer and the sacraments, so that the teacher can see the student as the unique and unrepeatable human being created in the image and likeness of God. Only a constantly cultivated inner life of the educator allows for the focus I have been talking about. In the words of Luigi Ginzani, the founder of Communion and Liberation, he says, "We can only communicate a truth that has changed us." So beautifully said. We can only communicate a truth that has changed us. When we as Christian educators, we as Christians in general, don't first ourselves believe and live what Christ teaches us, we have no chance in educating others. If I may return for one moment to the 2008 speech to educators by Benedict XVI, which is so full of wisdom and shows how an inner life of faith directs the teacher to the proper use of reason. We heard this beautifully explained through the first speech today by the President of Parliament, who spoke so well of faith and reason as the core of educational endeavor. This is what Benedict XVI says. How might Christian educators respond? These harmful developments, and he refers here to the various sexual ideologies that are being impressed upon us today, these harmful developments point to the particular urgency of what we might call intellectual charity. This aspect of charity calls the educator to recognize that the profound responsibility to lead the young to truth is nothing less than an act of love. So beautifully said. The profound responsibility to lead the young to truth is nothing less than an act of love. That's what he calls intellectual charity. Yes, the educators withstanding the latest opinions, but instead focusing on leading their charge to understand the truth of what it means to be human, that is the biggest act of love they can give. But Benedict goes further. He says, indeed, the dignity of education lies in fostering the true perfection and happiness of those to be educated. This is a heavy burden of responsibility, which is why educators, in my view, belong to the most important people necessary to build and strengthen a nation for generations to come. I come to my third and last point. How faith opens the heart in education. Faith makes us see in life and in education. It does not limit our scope. In fact, it broadens it. Let me illustrate this point with another anecdote. In 1996, I traveled for the first time in my life to Asia, where with a group of friends I visited Malaysia. And then we went specifically to the island of Penang in the South China Sea. And there we went snorkeling. It was an impressive experience that I will never forget. What surprised me the most, however, was the effect sunlight, direct sunlight, had on how we could see things underwater. When clouds covered the sun, all was black, white, and gray. When the clouds parted and were gone, and the sun shone directly into the water, another world seemed to appear. where fish, shells, and plants suddenly exploded into a feast of colors and beauty, so rich that it was hard to describe in words until the day of today. It was stunning. This is what faith does to the human being in education. It shines a light. It makes visible what we did not know existed. Because it is like the sun shining into the water and replacing the limited view of black, white, and gray with the abundance of colors and visibility that opens up whole new horizons and therefore opens the heart for truth. As educators, we need to work constantly towards allowing people's hearts and minds to become receptive, especially in a time and age that the distractions are manifold, especially through social media, the internet, and what you may not have. We have to make the hearts of the educated receptive. And here's the point. Not so much receptive for our own opinions or our own ideas, but receptive of the truth of what it means to be human. And this is a lifelong journey that requires that light of faith I spoke about, helping us to the inner life that allows us to grow in wisdom and character. Wisdom and character ultimately bring us closer to the truth, but only when we grow daily in these two. Here, the role of the educational process guided by faith is paramount to truly and for life changing the hearts of the educated. As long as the educators themselves, and I cannot repeat that enough, are rooted in a life of seeking truth and actually living by it. Stratford Caldecott, a great thinker of education, wrote in his book Beauty in the World, Rethinking the Foundations of Education, the following. He says, "You cannot communicate a truth that has not changed you. You cannot build a community on a truth that has not been incorporated into you, making you the kind of person you are. The person is, to some extent, the message. We can have the best textbooks, the greatest texts, but if we as the messenger do not live the life of unity, then we are not successful." I come to my conclusion. Ultimately, what a truly Christian education wants to achieve, no matter what the age or profession of the student, young or old, is the true and the lasting inner freedom of the individual human being in their care. Inner freedom is the key. Once more, Caldecott. He says, "A person, however, is free," Jesus states, "only when he recognizes the truth about himself. This naturally involves a slow, patient, and loving process by which one can gradually discover one's own being, one's own authentic image." So, to summarize, what is our role as Christian educators in today's world, where faith is increasingly rejected and pushed to the side? Here I would like to quote from my own work, a short pamphlet I published last year under the title, "What is Education?" And there are some copies in front if you are interested. Education is the seeking out, planting, and caring for the seed that lies hidden in the heart and mind of every human being, young and old. Doing so requires an atmosphere of truthfulness and beauty, in which through acquiring knowledge and the heroic practice of virtues, the character of the individual person is continually shaped, strengthened, and inspired by uplifting human interactions, profound friendships, and a community where charity reigns supreme. Here, he or she is then enabled, with great minds of human history, to learn how to think. Another essential key, to learn how to think. In our modern societies, we have unlearned how to think because we allow ourselves to be pushed into ideological directions, into ideological camps, where we only think in one direction. We have to learn how to think again. Go into the heart, this inner freedom I spoke about. This learning how to think allows for a life lived with a listening heart that sets its sights on the pursuit of the true, the good, and the beautiful. Education, therefore, and by the way, some of you might think this is all very beautiful theory, but what about the practice? I have spoken to you here today exclusively from practice. Education, therefore, is the art of learning how to live in accordance with the Creator God's plan for humanity. Thank you for your attention.